Here we go. Red versus Blue, episode number 64. My name is Mike Stark.
And I'm Keith Curry.
And of course, this time out, the big story is the Charlie Kirk assassination. Speak to me about it, Keith, from a conservative point of view.
Well, it is a true American tragedy, first and foremost. It's a tragedy for Charlie, for his family, for his young children. It's a tragedy for the American nation, for our body politic, for our unity as a country, and for what it does to us. This is going to be for a generation. It's hard to make the comparisons, but they'll remember this the way we remember President Kennedy's assassination, or we'll remember some of the things from the 70s. So it has the potential of being a turning point in politics. It appears that the assassin may have been, when we don't know yet, there's a lot that's still yet to be investigated, radicalized by the internet and video games. It's reported he is involved with a man who's in transition to be a woman. I didn't even know that there was a word for this. Apparently it's demisex. My take on this is that as a result of this assassination, Charlie Kirk is going to get the Malcolm X treatment. Malcolm was a popular but flawed leader in the 1960s. He did not accept Dr. King's views on nonviolence. His famous quote was, "By any means necessary." He was a separatist. He was not an integrationist, which was the major issue at the time. He was killed by a rival faction of black Muslims. Had he lived, we'd remember him as a sort of a minor figure, maybe the way we remember Stokely Carmichael as part of the civil rights movement. But because he was assassinated, he got the full Spike Lee movie treatment. There are streets and schools in New York named after him. And to this day now, 60 plus years later, people remember his name. And a similar kind of thing will happen to Charlie Kirk, particularly among conservative circles. The immediate political impact is it's the only thing that's been able to take the Epstein case off the front page, although I think it's coming back. And it's focused on our national leadership and in some cases the lack of it. Spencer Cox, the governor of Utah, I think is widely credited as sounding the right tone in terms of turning down the temperature. The president certainly and the vice president certainly have not. Utah legislators today are getting death threats. Democratic legislators are getting death threats from people on the right. It's exposed a horrible, ugly underside of American politics.
And I will just say, I'm not going to say a lot on this. This is not America. I think that once things calm down and we can look at it with a little bit of distance, we might have different perspectives on this. And maybe we can do that if this show continues. We keep threatening to throw the show away, but I don't think it's going anywhere at this point. But we can discuss this down the line as the impacts of this horrible event set in. Right? Is that a fair?
We can, and I think it's exposed some fault lines, and there's a lot of finger pointing going on now, Mike, between the left and the right as to who is the most extreme, who is the most responsible for the violence. There's been some very interesting reporting and polling done this week, and the answer is it's not ideological. 80% of Americans opposed efforts to silence speech that they find personally offensive. That includes 77% of Democrats, 80% of independents, 82% of Republicans. Where the divide is generational. It's not ideological. 93% of baby boomers and 86% of Gen X oppose efforts to silence speech, but only 71% of millennials and only 58% of Gen Z oppose that, meaning that 42% thinks it's by some factor or token all right to do so. And there's no difference based on whether you have a college education or not. So somewhere along the line, the newer generation of Americans have lost the concepts and values that everybody, Democrat, Republican, and Independent, who have come before them, hold. That is a dangerous thing. And what's happening is people are willing to justify violence against the right villain, whoever that might be defined as. And that is a tragic place for the country to be.
Wow. That may be the headline in all of this.
It's a problem that defies an easy solution. Maybe it has to do with socialization through video games or through a life that's lived on the internet without contact with other people. There is some corrosive element that's causing this generation particularly to hold this view, and it needs to be addressed and rooted out.
Except they are our future leaders.
That is the tragedy for America, frankly.
Yeah. I think We covered that nicely, and we'll move on to more sublime issues.
Reapportionment, everybody's favorite topic. And if you're in California, you're seeing hundreds of millions of dollars of commercials from both sides on Proposition 50. Both of them are both completely disingenuous, telling people that the way to stop fixing elections is to fix the election. And Californian Republicans opposing that, while at the same time acquiescing and supporting what's going on in Texas to do exactly the same thing. There was reporting this week in the New York Times that helps us understand exactly what the stakes are. According to Nate Silver, who is one of the most recognized political analysts, he thinks that today Democrats have a 4-point advantage in the national generic poll for Congress. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean a 4-point advantage in every congressional district because everyone is different, but nationally a 4-point edge. So he asked the question, if these various reapportionment plans go through, how much do the Democrats need to win by in order to take the House? If no states had, and here's the baseline, if no states had redistricted, a 0.2% Democratic advantage in the popular vote would be enough for the Democrats to take the House. Now keep that in mind because that's the baseline. If Texas, and only Texas, reapportions, the Democrats need an advantage of 1.6%.
Wow.
But if California redistricts, then the advantage drops down. Democrats only need 0.3%. So California essentially negates everything Texas does. Now, there are other states. This week, Missouri moved to reapportion its seats. They're going to take out a black seat in Kansas City and redistribute those black voters to Republican districts, something that, by the way, would have been patently illegal just a few short years ago before some certain court decisions. Indiana is trying to change its district to get one more Republican, Ohio, one more Republican. If California does its thing, and then Ohio and Missouri and Indiana do their thing, Democrats need 1.6% margin. If Florida, and there's some talk that Florida may or may not, they're not really moving this very fast. I don't think the governor's real enthused about it. Then it becomes 2.3% that the Democrats need to win to take the House. So it's a significant impact. That is a 10 times or 100 times increase from the margin that they needed without any reapportionment. Now, here's the kicker, Mike. If California fails, it has to go to the voters, so it could fail. But Ohio and Indiana and Michigan and Missouri do pass, then it's a 2.8 margin that Democrats need. And if Florida goes along with it, it increases all the way up to 3.4%. So there are marginal numbers. In a big landslide year, they're not going to make a difference. But we haven't had a big landslide year in a while. I think it's going to be close. And so these reapportionment battles really have a very big impact on who is going to control the House. It is political manipulation being played on a national level, like on a chessboard, and it can make a difference in who controls the House of Representatives.
Is all of this going to open a door for a new discussion on the Electoral College?
Well, it might, because what it says is that any constitutional provision of how we do things is now open for discussion.
Right.
So that will allow the Democrats, who are disadvantaged by the Electoral College in its current form, to come after the Electoral College. Now, there's where you set or stand on the Electoral College depends on whether you're a big state or a small state.
Right.
And so there are differences there that may impact that. But sure, it opens up the door for that. It opens up the door to let's make D.C. a state. Let's make Puerto Rico a state. Let's make Orange County a state. All kinds of various, machinations people can go through to manipulate the electoral process. It's opened a very bad door to places that people shouldn't go that will fundamentally change our system of government.
And people that listen to this show hate it when we agree, but I agree. Okay, let's move on to something else. We talked about this before we went on the air here, that in old times, there wouldn't even be a question about this, that this would be corruption at its simplest form. But now we take it for granted. Lay it out for us.
The New York Times this week did a major expose about Trump's visit to the United Arab Emirates, the UAE. There they agreed to invest $2 billion in sovereign wealth funds into cryptocurrency, much of it coming through the World Liberty Financial, that's Trump's cryptocurrency company that he has an interest in. Almost simultaneously, Trump reported on his financial disclosures a valuation of $5 billion of increase through his crypto holdings, directly as a result of the UAE investment. Of course, he gave the UAE the ability to buy computer chips they wanted as part of that quid pro quo. $5 billion is more than all of the accumulated wealth in office of all of the previous presidents combined. It's more than all of the congressional members have been accused of stealing ever in history. It is a breathtaking number. Apparently, it is not illegal because the president himself is not subject to many of the conflict of interest laws, and because he's certainly not going to be prosecuted by Pam Bondi and the Trump Justice Department. But it is just a phenomenal situation. It's like Maduro in Venezuela or any other third world banana republic where the El Jefe can become personally wealthy. It's certainly much more than Marcos was able to accumulate in the Philippines.
Right.
Where El Jefe can accumulate such huge wealth by virtue of the decisions he makes as the head of state.
Wow. It's mind-boggling to me that this can go on. But is it because we have so many other distractions, and this is not a sexy topic? Is that a fair assessment?
I think we have become imbued to this. Trump has successfully just toughed out accusations, and so it becomes among people on the right, it's just another, big media. The left is out trying to get him, and they just don't care. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff on the right this week about Epstein. They just don't care. I mean, they're saying, well, we don't want to have the evidence out there because it will damage the victims. The victims have said, let's put the evidence out there, take the victims' names out, leave everybody else's name in. And there are all kinds of backflips and convolutions people are going through to try and prevent that from happening. He was telling the truth when he said he could stand at Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and get away with it.
Yeah, and that statement came early on, didn't it? Finally, let's talk about a friend of yours that is a pollster who has some interesting numbers.
I saw this online and I was just sort of gobsmacked by it. The headline on his post was, "Your inspirational messaging is making people angry." And what he says is basically that people today don't want to hear things about a shining city on the hill and 1,000 points of light. They're angry. They're angry at business. They're angry at capitalism. Apparently, Democrats today rate socialism higher by 66% to 42% over capitalism. Only 37% of all Americans have a positive view of big business. And he recommends some language for candidates and for businesses to use. It says, acknowledge systemic failures first. The system is broken. Find your connection to small business. Get away from big business. Localize. Talk about getting by instead of getting ahead. The American dream of aspirational growth is to be put on the back burner. Frame solutions as fighting back rather than moving forward. That's a key difference now of people trying to be more combative. Emphasize basic dignity over opportunity. We've always called America the opportunity society. He's saying that doesn't work in the polls anymore. We've got to get to basic dignity. And he says the role is fundamentally changed. Stop trying to inspire people who just want to be understood. So this tells us some things. It tells us that Mondami's message in New York is not a one-off, that has appeal, and it has appeal beyond the democratic socialists of New York in a way that Republicans should be very cognizant of. It tells us that our economic institutions, our capitalist system, has a greater threat. And it has a greater threat, by the way, Mike, not only from the left, but from the right. Trump is taking government positions in companies. He's telling companies what to do. He's dictating their policies to them. He wants to get away from quarterly reporting in the stock market. He's basically breaking down the structures of our economic system. That's an attack from the right. The left has their own series of things that they want to do in terms of federalizing or municipalizing grocery stores and taking over energy production and all kinds of other bad things. But it tells us that, the threat to our heretofore capitalistic democratic institutions that we've all taken for granted is very, very real. It needs leadership at the top to effectively address it. And that leadership is missing.
Is there any ties to this, to what we talked about earlier about the thoughts about political violence and it being less about ideology and more about generational feelings.
Yes, all of these poll numbers are much more amplified amongst younger people since the Mondami experience in New York. And so young people just have a fundamentally different concept of business, of government, of capitalism, of economic system, of economic justice than their older people, even in the same political party, have. That's what's so challenging, and that's what needs to be addressed. And it's a significant issue, and Republicans and Democrats need to be cognizant of it because it will affect our politics. It will affect our ability to communicate with each other, to live together in the same community. And it is, the other side of the coin to what we saw happen in Utah.
Very interesting stuff today. And it wasn't just about the horrific events that took place. There's some underlying things that tie it all together, I think. And I think we really took a good look at that today. And I appreciate your insight as always, Keith.
I wish I could be more optimistic and hopeful, but I'm told that those messages are making people angry.
Well, we will be back. We're not going anywhere. We're not going to be discouraged like that. We want to thank you for joining us. We appreciate the comments we're getting on some of our platforms. We appreciate that. If you haven't already, check out our Facebook page, subscribe where you can, and share the show with people, because that's how we get other people involved in this conversation. So thanks again for joining us. We'll see you again next time for another edition of Red versus Blue.
Thanks, everybody. Keep the faith.